us. I'm Melody Bahan. I'm the Executive Director of Minnesota Film and TV. And Jill.
I'm Jill Johansson, and I am the Incentive Specialist.
Great, great. So thank you for joining us today. Before we get started, for those of you who are local, I just want to remind you that we are having an in-person networking event tomorrow, no, not tomorrow, Thursday at Utapils Brewing. You can find information on that on our social media and on our website. It will be quite celebratory, I think, so join us if you can. And I know that we have at least one person, maybe a couple more joining us today as guests, not on camera, but to hear about the programs from entertainment partners out in LA. And I just want to give a special welcome to them and also a plug. Entertainment Partners has been doing some of the best webinars during this pandemic, and I assume those will be continuing, but I would highly recommend that you check out their webinar, their masterclass series program. Some really helpful information about finance and incentives and all kinds of great things. We will be taking questions today because I'm sure there are many. I'm not sure that we'll have all the answers, but we'll certainly take the questions. Sorry. And we ask that you use the chat function to submit those. So the first thing we're going to do is kind of walk through, sorry, my coworker, walk through a little presentation, which might answer some questions, and then we'll discuss after. So welcome. We are doing an overview of Minnesota's production incentive programs, plural. So what are the incentive programs? We now have two. We have what we have had for many years, the Minnesota Production Rebate Program, and we'll get into that later in detail. But we also have a new Minnesota Tax Credit Program, which I know is what a lot of you are here to hear about. But first, I want to just touch on the purpose of incentives. The original incentive, the rebate program, was created by the legislature. The tax credit program, the new one, was created by the legislature. And the purpose of these programs is jobs. This is language from the original statute that created the rebate program. It is a jobs program, so, and jobs and economic development. So I just want everyone to be clear about that. It's not a grant program. It's not an arts program. It's a jobs program. And a couple words about those jobs. A couple of things that we have really been kind of trying to hit home with, particularly with our local filmmaking community, is the importance of employee classification. How you classify your employees, whether they are W-2 employees or 1099 employees. Are they employees or are they independent contractors? That's a definition that was created by the IRS, and there is a link. The link that you see here is on our website, so you can get more information. Not properly classifying an employee is a form of wage theft, and Minnesota in the last couple of years has really beefed up the wage theft laws in the state. They've strengthened worker protections and employer sanctions. And again, you can find information about this on our website, and you'll find that link there. Just one of the new requirements under this new wage theft law that we will be asking folks to do who apply is to include a written notice to every single employee about their employment status and terms of employment, including their wages, their hours, their benefits, all of that. You need to have one of those for each one of your employees signed. And again, you can find details on that on our website. So let's get into some details about the two programs. How are they different? Well, one is a rebate program, one is a tax credit program. Very, very different types of programs that work differently and better for different kinds of projects. Our rebate program is a $100,000 minimum spend in Minnesota. It's a cash rebate of up to 25% on qualified expenditures. And what a rebate means is that when you're done with the project, all of your expenses are submitted and verified, and then you as the applicant get a check of up to 25% to reimburse your expenses. This program is funded through a direct appropriation by the legislature, and they, in this most recent budget session, they appropriated the same amount that they have for the last two biennia, which is $475,000 per fiscal year for the current fiscal year and next fiscal year. So those are kind of overview in a nutshell. The tax credit program, on the other hand, is really designed to attract larger projects to the state. It is a $1 million minimum spend in Minnesota, and you can receive tax credits of up to 25% of qualified expenditures. And where it differs from a rebate program is with a tax credit program. Once you finish, your project is complete, all of your expenses are submitted, and you have a CPA audit, which is required for all projects in this program. The applicant or the project lead is issued a certificate for tax credits. Those credits, there's no cash. You don't get any money. This credit can be used for a future tax liability in the state of Minnesota. So you will get a credit on your taxes. These credits, because this program is a transferable tax credit program, the credit holder, the certificate holder, can transfer these credits or sell them, basically, and get the cash. And there are companies that work specifically in the industry, in the market of buying and selling these kinds of tax credits. This program, this new program, is capped at 4.95 million in credits per calendar year for 4 years. So that is, again, kind of the overview. That is what is in the statute itself. And the statute that created this program, you can also find on our website. You can find the language there. So now I want to, I'd like to get into a lot of detail on the tax credit, but unfortunately, it was just signed into law on July 1st. So it's part of the omnibus tax bill, that's House File 9. And as I said, you can get the language of our provision on our website. The guidelines, application materials, all of the details are not in the statute. Those will be in the administrative guidelines. And those guidelines are going to be developed by the Department of Employment and Economic Development, the Department of Revenue, and our office, Minnesota Film and TV. So it is a completely new program. And while we've certainly done a lot of research over the years on tax credit programs, we could not begin the process of developing guidelines with the state until after the bill was passed and signed by the governor into law. So we are starting this week on meetings with the state to begin the process. I know the big question for everybody is, when is this going to go into, when's the application going to be ready? When's it going to go into effect? And we don't have a definitive answer right now. We know that we're starting to do the work. We know that DEED and the Department of Revenue have a date in August that they're meeting to go over the work that we do between now and then. So it could be, we just don't know. It's not in our hands, unfortunately. So we can get back to questions on that at the end, but now I do want to talk just for a few minutes about the production rebate program, the program that we have had for many, many years. This program runs on the fiscal year, which is July 1 to June 30th. So because the legislative special session did not end until June 30th, and the bills were not signed until July 1st, we were not able to implement the program immediately. We can't certify any projects until we have a fully executed contract with the state, and the state would not begin to draw up that contract until the bill was signed into law. It's how it works. They won't do anything until it's law. So we are working, they are working on that contract right now. In the meantime, we have published on our website guidelines, the new application, and we are accepting applications now. The deadline for the first round is August 18th. We appreciate you getting them to us before August 18th. And applications will be processed within 10 days of that August 18th deadline. Jill, do you want to say anything about?
You covered it.
Okay. All right. Well, again,
well, I would add that the sooner you can submit your applications, the better, because if you wait until the 18th and that application is incomplete, it will not be reviewed. So if you have your materials in order, you can send them now. And we will check at this time to make sure that all the elements are included. And if they're not, we'll let you know so that you can get that to us before the 18th.
Great. So for the rebate program this year, we have made some slight changes in the guidelines. For those of you familiar with the program, you may know that we made a complete overhaul of the guidelines a couple of years ago. And so this year, we just have a couple of small changes. For feature films, all film projects are required to display signage that our office will provide. And another change that could affect some local folks, if there are people on your project who hold more than one above the line position, for example, if you are both the producer and the director, or the writer and the lead, you are only eligible to receive reimbursement for one of those positions. You have to choose. And producer and director salary reimbursement will be capped at 3% of the total submitted eligible Minnesota expenditures. So there's always a reason for changes that we make, and we certainly think that this is justified, these changes. This, as I pointed out in the beginning, this is a jobs program. It's not a job program for one person. So that is that change, and we can certainly answer any questions you have about that. We have one change for TV program or series in the rebate program. Internal invoices, including but not limited to equipment rental or studio space, are no longer eligible for reimbursement. So you can't invoice yourself and get reimbursed for it, is basically what that is. And then we have one change for the commercials and post-production only. And that is that the minimum spend for these projects is now $100,000, just as it is for all other projects in this program. So that is a very quick and dirty overview of the programs, what we know, and now we want to answer some questions. So we did get some questions in advance. Jill, can I apply to both programs?
The answer is no.
Okay. So because of the difference in minimum spend, I think it will be pretty clear what projects fit into which program. Sorry. When will the tax credit program begin? We don't
know.
We don't have an answer. That is, as I said earlier, that is up to the state and how quickly the state works with us to develop these guidelines and get everything into place. You're dealing with two separate state departments, Employment and Economic Development and the Department of Revenue, which oversees taxes. So we just don't know. We will certainly keep everyone in the community updated. If we get any kind of a hard timeline, we'll let everyone know. But until then, we just ask for your patience. Just because something gets passed into law does not mean that it starts immediately. Will the application and the guidelines be similar to the rebate program?
Again, we don't know.
But I do think that it's safe to say that from our perspective, as we develop the guidelines, we're going to start with the rebate guidelines that we already have approved by the state as kind of the launching pad. There are a lot of things that are specific to a tax credit that are not included in those guidelines that have to be developed. So again, that's part of the ongoing work that we'll be doing over the next couple of months. Will there be monthly application deadlines for the tax credit like there are for the rebate currently? And the answer to that is probably not. Under Minnesota law, all tax credit programs must process applications on a first come, first served basis. So that is not something that we control. It will be first come, first served. And then what is the approval process going to look like? Again, we're not sure. But again, I think you can look to the rebate program as a starting point. The application, the guidelines, the things that are important, what will go into the decisions that are made about approval are going to be things around jobs and how much money is spent and where it's spent. So it's, as I said, I think you can start with looking at the guidelines and we'll build on that.
Melody,
Jill.
a question came in on chat that actually we can answer,
What?
that we can give a solid answer to. The question is this: for the rebate program, is there a guarantee before entering production that the appropriated 475K won't have run out on our production? Is it earmarked and held for production if an application is successful, or is it a bit of a gamble until after production is wrapped?
Great question. Jill's going to answer that.
I will answer that. The answer is there's never a guarantee with state funds. That being said, we have never had a situation with this particular program where the money was taken away or returned to the state or reallocated in some way. So it is safe to say that if you apply and if your application is certified and successful, then we will set aside that amount of rebate for your production and your production only. And that money will not be given to anybody else. We don't like to use the term earmarked, but we will set aside that chunk of money for your production for reimbursement. There are some stipulations under which that money can go away. And that is detailed in the guidelines, things like fraud, or if you lose your funding, the project cannot continue, things like that. There are some stipulations in that manner, but for all intents and purposes, that money is set aside for your project and your project alone.
Yeah.
And now I see we have other questions flying in. The next one is for the credit. Any idea what qualifying expenses might include or exclude for rebate or credit? Any idea of a time requirement between approval and use? This one I can half answer. In regards to the Minnesota production rebate, we do list in the guidelines a pretty generalized list of what is and is not acceptable for reimbursement. And if you have specific questions beyond that, just feel free to reach out and we will let you know. Time requirement between approval and use. So for both, well, I should say for the rebate program only, I can't say for the tax credit at this point, but for the rebate program only, you cannot have started principal photography before you receive a certification letter from our office. So when you receive a letter that says your project is certified for the program, that date is the date that expenses become eligible. And we will give you a letter within 10 days of reviewing your application. So whatever the posted deadline is, we look at 10 business days and you should have a letter if your project is certified at that time.
Right.
And
again, I would,
ahead.
again, I would say, there will be some differences, but qualified expenditures for the rebate program are pretty standard with programs across the country. So I think that will be our starting point.
Here's another question. Is there a carry forward for the buyer of the tax credit? Is that the 4 years you referred to in the beginning slide?
No, that's not the 4 years I referred to, but there is a carry forward, and that is written into the statute. I believe it's a 5-year carry forward. So if you, as the holder of the tax credits, want to use those yourself, you don't have to use them all in the first year. You can spread that out over 4 or 5 years. Again, that language is in the statute. And then also in terms of carry forward, I think it's important to note, because the program is not starting at the beginning of the tax year. So the statute makes the program effective for the tax year starting in the current one, 2021. It is possible, given the lead time that we need to get the program up and running, that not all of the 4.95 million in credits are going to be allocated in this calendar year by the end of December. Any credits that are not allocated in this year will roll over into the next tax year. So if the program is not used at all in this calendar year, then in the next calendar, in 2022, there would be close to $10 million in credits available. Oh, we have lots of questions.
We have lots of questions.
Okay.
The answer, sorry, the question is animation eligible for the rebate under either post only or production? The answer is yes. If it is a full animated project, like a feature film, yes, that would qualify under production. Post only, let's have a side conversation about that. If that's the case, I'd like to have more details.
Mm-hmm. And the rebate program has been used by animated series in the past.
Yes, that absolutely has. I read somewhere that your movie also has to have the story set in Minnesota to qualify. That is not exactly the case. Because the applications, the projects are scored based on certain evaluative criteria, you will get points if the story is a Minnesota story set in Minnesota with recognizable Minnesota locations. That does give you a bump on your score. So it's a benefit, but not a requirement. The next question, is there a deadline by which an approved rebate or credit must be used? How long do you have to use it? For the Minnesota production rebate, the cash reimbursement, once you have that check from us, you can do whatever you want with it. It's in your hands and your bank account. You can do what you need to do with that. For the tax credit,
Wait, Jill, I think
yes.
the question might be, once you're certified for the rebate, how long do you have to get your project done, start your project and get it finished?
Okay. Once you're certified, so if your project is $1 million budget or less, you may apply no earlier than 90 days before the start of principal photography. If it's $1 million or more, you can apply no earlier than 6 months prior to the start of principal. So it must be within that window of time to start your project. And you'll have to weigh that against the application deadlines.
And then once you're certified, how long do you have to complete your project?
Well, that depends. Usually we base the end date off your application and when you believe you're going to be done with either production or post. If it's happening here in Minnesota, then we give you 90 days after that final date to turn in your paperwork for reimbursement. We will consider deadline extensions on a case-by-case basis, but typically 90 days.
Yeah, obviously, we did make some COVID extensions this year, and hopefully we won't have to do that again. So I hope that answered the question. Do we have other questions? Wow. Jill, is there anything that you want to add?
There's another question that came in. Is there a per project limit? And I guess I'd like clarification on that question. Are you talking about amount per project? Is there a per project cap?
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking about how many projects you can apply with? Let me know. Amount. There is not. For the Minnesota production rebate, there is not an amount, except for that you can only receive up to 25% of reimbursement on eligible expenses.
Right. And because the appropriation for the rebate program is relatively small, that
It's a
kind of
natural
creates
cap.
a cap right there. There's only so much money, and when that money is gone, it's gone. For the rebate or for the tax credit program, there is not in the statute a per project cap. I that is one of the things that is on the table, I think, for the guidelines. It's something that we'll be talking to the state about.
I have another question here. Are Minnesota filmmakers, as a Minnesota filmmaker, are Minnesota residents given precedence in hiring? Your project will score higher in the evaluation process if you are fully stacked with Minnesotans. That's the simple answer.
Yeah. And on the tax credit front, one of the issues in developing the guidelines is do we include a requirement that a certain percentage of your labor must be Minnesota residents in order to qualify? There are some states that don't incentivize non-resident labor at all. So, we'll, again, to be developed.
The next question is, can you give a quick and dirty breakdown of how you come to the 25% maximum rebate, please?
Well,
it's in the statute for starters. That's the amount that the legislature agreed to. So that is the law. Maximum is because if we came into a situation where we only had a small amount of funds available and we had two projects that scored equally high and were eligible to receive reimbursement, we may choose to split that amount rather than give it just to one project. So then we could reduce that percentage. That has not happened so far, but it's a possibility. So that's why we say a 25% maximum.
Are we again at the end of the questions?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Okay. Oh, here. And as soon as you said that, here's another one. What percentage of your labor needs to be Minnesotans to qualify? Again, the higher, the better, but there is no requirement at this time.
That's on the rebate program. On the
rebate program.
On the tax credit program, the other programs that we're looking at generally require a minimum of 60% of the labor must be in-state residents. But yeah, we'll work on that with the state. We're getting some more questions.
Yes. Is the rebate program similar to Snowbait? Yes, we just changed the name to the Minnesota Production Rebate. We are losing the snow part of Snowbait. It's the Minnesota Production Rebate. Yeah. It is the same program for all intents and purposes.
Yeah. And just a little bit of the thinking, that's a decision that I made when I started with this organization back in 2017. It was to get rid of that. What I was finding when I was talking to producers, network folks, studio folks who had never been to Minnesota is their only familiarity with the state was basically the film Fargo and the word snowbait. So they thought it was a 24/7 year-round frozen wasteland filled with nothing but white Norwegians. So this is really a kind of a to get away from, branding the state as a land of ice and snow. And that's why we're trying to get rid of that. I know people still refer to it as snowbait, but it is the Minnesota production rebate.
But if you call it snowbait, we know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
There's another question about any leads on big projects coming to Minnesota.
Nope. Nothing that we can discuss at this point. And I think a lot of the larger projects are going to wait and see what we come up with in terms of guidelines and application timeline and all of that. But you all should know that everyone is watching what happens in Minnesota and what is available. Our friends at Entertainment Partners are certainly on it, and their clients include all of the producers network studios. And so it is being watched. So we do expect projects to come here. And once we have a better idea of the timeline, we will continue, because I've already started reaching out to producers and networks that have projects that might be a good fit for Minnesota.
Will union represented labor be favored?
For the
No specification.
Okay. In the rebate program, there is not a provision for union labor, and it really does depend on the budget size as to whether or not it is a union project. The tax credit, again, to be determined, because the purpose of this program is to create jobs that pay a living wage and hopefully benefits, health, pension, all of that. And because our industry is really so union driven, once you get above a certain level, we expect that the projects that are going through the tax credit program, because it's a $1 million minimum spend, we would expect the majority, if not all of them, to be union affiliated projects. But again, we won't know until we finish those conversations with the state.
We have a bunch more questions.
Okay.
Somebody's asking, how do I apply? And I'm assuming you mean for the Minnesota production rebate. That application is on our website along with guidelines and all of the affiliated forms. And that's at mnfilmtv.org. Somebody's asking if there will be a tax credit for commercial production or post-production with a lower minimum spend. Not at this point in time. Right now, it's $1 million minimum. And then I have a note from our friend Sherry up in St. Louis County, who said to remind everybody that the Minnesota production rebate, the cash reimbursement, can be stacked with other regional incentives, including this new St. Louis County incentive. So if you shoot your entire production up in St. Louis County, you can apply for their program to get cash back, as well as the Minnesota production rebate to get cash back. So that's a bonus. And plus, the Upper Midwest Film Office is fantastic, and they can help you out with whatever you need. They are the experts in that region, and they can get you whatever you need in
Yes.
St. Louis County.
Sherry and Ricky are the best. So yes, we absolutely love them and they do great work. All right.
There's another question from non-local creators.
Yes.
Are you aware of resources to build a local team? As a matter of fact, yes, on our website, mnfilmtv.org, we do have a production directory that lists all of our, I shouldn't say all, many of our wonderful local talent and crew. So also, if you are not listed, feel free to create a free listing so that non-local creators can find you and hire you.
Yeah, I can't emphasize that enough right now because, as I said, the industry is going to be looking to Minnesota, and the first thing they want to know is there enough crew to cover my needs? And what they look at is the production directory on our website. So there is an additional directory that I want everybody to be aware of. Uh, Ava DuVernay's company, Array, launched a production directory that called Array Crew, that is funded by individual studios and networks. So it is only available to those funding entities. That you can find out more on their website, arraycrew.com or .org, I can't remember. And it is designed to really provide access information about underrepresented crew members, below the line crew. So anyone who is below the line with one professional credit, take a look at it. Please get yourself registered at our production directory and Array Crew. We worked with Array to include Minnesota in the regions that they cover in this first year. So if you live and work in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Duluth area, or the Rochester area, you can create a profile on Array Crew. So those are really important. Now, I also want to say, just in terms of our production directory, this is not going to happen anytime soon, but our website will be getting a much needed overhaul in the coming months. And the production directory is part of that overhaul. So it would be great if you would go ahead and get your listing in the directory now as people are looking at it. And then your listing will be included in that upgrade that we make later in the year. Done. Anything else?
Anyone? Maybe not.
Wow. Well, I think we've covered everything that we know. So I want to thank you all. Please keep watching us on social media and feel free to reach out to us. Our emails are on our website, or info@mnfilmtv.org. I hope to see a bunch of you tomorrow at Utapils and Thursday. I've been doing that all day. Sorry, Thursday. And we will be returning to our regular First Friday Toolkit series in August with personal finance for freelancers. More information about that going out soon. So thank you all for being here.
Thanks, everybody.